Hello and welcome to Sex, Psychics and Psychedelics, Discovering Inner Liberation. My name is BananaJane Garnett. I'm a licensed psychotherapist, a lover of freedom, and a relentless explorer of the mind. Please come join me on my journey in hot pursuit of inner illumination and liberation. For more about me, you can find me at the BananaJane on Instagram. Now let's dive in. Today I speak with Caitlin Thompson, who is a scientist and a senior practitioner and researcher of the frog medicine Kambo. We talk about Caitlin's healing journey through her autoimmune disorder, how Kambo has changed her life and many others, the new wave in microdosing Kambo, and the future of this very potent medicine. Welcome, Caitlin.
Good morning.
Caitlin, hello.
Hi, how are you?
Hi, I'm good. How are you?
I'm pretty good. Let me just double check that I have the right microphone. Okay. How's the sound quality?
It sounds pretty good. I mean, raspy, but I think that's your sexy, raspy voice.
I think it's my voice singing too many Kambo songs lately.
Oh my God. I forgot that singing is a key part of your job. That's funny.
Yeah. I think coming from the tropics into the dry climate and then doing a bunch of singing for the first time in a long time, my voice is like, ah!
Yeah. I bet. Well, I can't tell you that I'm not going to ask you to talk today, but I do invite you. I invite you to take it easy on your voice, whatever that means to you.
No worries.
So I first encountered you when I was at a psychedelics conference in LA, and you were on stage. And you're a young woman now, but you were even younger then, believe it or not. And I was so impressed. It was such such beautiful energy and so much good information. I mean, I was just so impressed at this very young woman telling with such a lot of kind of good factual information and also such a kind of vulnerable personal story, putting it all together, standing up and presenting. And so that's why I tracked you down to do some personal work with you, because I wanted to get to know you more, and I wanted to get to know more about the frog. And I still want to know more because I feel like, gosh, it's such an unknown world. So, I mean, why don't we start? I feel like before we get into kind of the juicier questions, I'd love to just get a bit about your kind of more academic background, and then how you encountered, then your story of how you encountered this medicine.
Yeah, absolutely. So my formal education is in neurobiology. And, as I shared in my story at the LAPS conference that you mentioned, the earlier years of my life were really riddled with chronic illness. I mean, there's a whole bunch of words that you could use to describe these different sort of symptoms and imbalances. Someone might call it Lyme disease and chronic fatigue and PTSD and small intestinal bacterial overgrowth or gut dysbiosis, food sensitivities, ankylosing spondylitis, interstitial cystitis, all sorts of terms. But really, I was just not well. And I had this autoimmune sort of dysfunction happening in a bunch of different tissues that were affecting me really dramatically. And it was actually psychedelics that kind of initiated this healing process for me. And that ultimately was an important part of leading me to Kambo. Now, Kambo is not a psychedelic substance. It's not hallucinogenic, but it is used sort of traditionally amongst the tribes that do practice with ayahuasca, which is a psychedelic. And so that's kind of naturally where the path led me, was to exploring all sorts of really interesting traditional indigenous medicines. And I actually had heard about Kambo years before I ever sat with it. I heard about it in Peru, in Iquitos, when I was there at an ayahuasca center. And when I first heard about it, I thought well, that sounds absolutely crazy. Why would
So yeah,
anyone do that?
what did you hear? Because I'm realizing we need to get grounded as well in what Kambo actually is, because of course there's an assumption sometimes that people have heard of these things. So tell me about how you first heard of it and then what you know of it now.
Yeah, some guy was just kind of describing this practice that the natives do, where they take this frog poison and they put it in burns in their skin, and it feels like you're dying, and you vomit, and it goes on for 30, 40 minutes. And they were describing it as when you do it 3 times, you get this like permanent sort of immunity to things. And I thought, well, that sounds incredibly dangerous and stupid. Why would anyone do that? And it never occurred to me that there were actually like Westerners that were participating in that type of thing. It sounded like some obscure ceremony that no one in their right mind would ever do. And I do remember coming back from that trip and remembering that weird frog thing that they had described. And I actually Googled it, and I found some studies on the peptides in the secretion. And I thought, well, that's fascinating. There's actually like some real stuff in there.
What do peptides do? What was exciting to you about the idea of peptides?
Yeah, at the time that I looked into this, I didn't really understand the magnitude of how amazing the peptides in Kambo actually are. So I was barely just scratching the surface. And really, I had just seen like, okay, someone has actually looked into this scientifically. And it seems that there is something actually tangible from this secretion that they use in this ritual. So then I didn't really think much of it for years.
Hold on, I'm sorry. I'm still not satisfied on the peptides thing. Just give me like a little, just a little clue into like what are the potential health benefits? I'm assuming it's health benefits.
Sure. I mean, I can dive in much deeper to the peptides. Yeah. So, but I'll give you a little.
Yeah,
a little
you don't have
taste
to
now.
go super deep, but yeah, a taste would be good.
Yeah. So peptides are basically like tiny little proteins. They're little chains of amino acids, and Kambo is full of these amazing peptide compounds. And a lot of them have actually been scientifically studied, and they have really potent antimicrobial, anti-cancerous, anti-inflammatory, and immune modulating effects. They change blood pressure and vasoconstriction and dilation. They affect the secretion of gastric juices and smooth muscle contraction in the intestines. They affect secretion of hormones and the entire endocrine system and the stress response and the pituitary adrenal axis. So they are quite fascinating.
So
and
we like them. Yeah, we want them.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
I mean, these particular ones, I mean, there are such things as, peptides in toxins and venoms in, scorpions and snakes, things like that. But in the frog, they seem to be so far pretty non-toxic, which is, counterintuitive to when you call something a poison.
Right.
You would think that this is actually a healthy thing for you to put into your body. But these peptides, they actually are a lot less toxic when you compare them to things like conventional antibiotics that could be used against bacterial infections. So they're quite amazing, and there's hundreds of them in this frog sweat.
Oh, okay. So it's sweat. It's funny. I was talking to my daughter about it this morning. I'm like, I think that they get the stuff out by milking the toads. And she's like, do toads have milk? And I'm like, I don't think that they have milk. But now you're saying sweat. Interesting. So it's not venom or milk, it's sweat.
So venom is when you use like a fang or a stinger to inject like a poisonous substance. Right. But the frog, it's actually, they have these glands that secrete this substance, and then they wipe it all over their body. One, this deters predators from eating them. And two, it actually keeps them from getting these like weird infections, these fungal infections or bacterial infections. So they almost use it as like a sunscreen to rub all over their body so that they don't get sick.
Genius.
Yeah, it's brilliant.
Yeah.
So
okay, wow.
they use
Thank
it for
you.
their
That was
defense.
really helpful. That was really good. I love that amount of information.
Yeah.
That was perfect. Okay. So we're going back to your story. You thought it was nuts and then you thought it was interesting.
Right. Then I didn't think much of it.
Yeah.
Went on the next several years of my life. And then a good friend of mine, who's actually now, one of the most prominent practitioners in the world, he came like, man, I've been really, getting deep into this frog medicine lately. And I'm like, frog medicine. And then I asked him about it, and he started sharing with me kind of the deeper work that he was doing with this Kambo. And he was the first person to actually describe it to me in a way that was appealing, like where I actually thought like, oh, there is benefit to this. Cause before it just sounded like some awful superstitious thing.
Yeah.
And to hear that this person that I was close to was actually, really getting a lot of spiritual growth out of the experience, I was like, okay, yeah. Can you take me with you the next time you go? And he's like, yeah. So I went and did my first ceremony, and it was more profound than I had expected it to be. I really didn't have any expectation or really knowledge of what I was getting myself into. And I think in that moment of that ceremony, that was really the beginning of an acceleration of a healing process, because sometimes we don't realize how sick we are until we start to get better.
Yeah.
And I felt like I kind of got tricked into realizing how sick I had been most of my life, by having a glimpse into a pain-free existence for, just a few days even. And there was a lot of deep spiritual work that happened, in addition to the medicinal effects of the peptides killing things like Lyme bacteria or viruses, or reducing the inflammation and modulating your pain response. That's all amazing. But there was a deeper part of it that the Kambo really got to, which was sort of the energetic infections of ancestral trauma.
Oh,
And
yes. I want to just slow down with that for a minute and
okay.
say it again, because I think it's really important. The energetic infections of generational trauma.
Yeah.
Yes, 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 and yes. 100%. And it's the stuff, I mean, that is hard shit to see, right? It's
Yeah.
invisible. It's actually invisible. It's
Yeah.
so sort of deep inside us that we really are not aware of it until we get some quite radical new angle. And I think that's one of the reasons psychedelics are so sort of prominent right now, is because we need radical new angles. And I'm not saying they're for everyone. These are particular kind of paths for particular kinds of people. I mean, I can totally relate, because I feel in some ways I got tricked into various kinds of healing journeys. But yeah, I mean, that's absolutely right. And it's really a hard thing to quantify. It's a hard thing to talk about without sounding woo-woo, and which is one of the reasons I appreciate your sort of more grounded and scientific background. But yeah, tell me a little bit more about that. Is there some example you can give from your own life?
Yeah, I mean, in that ceremony specifically, I had kind of identified that, like, in my physical being, there was this energetic, like I said, infection that had been propagated through lineage of my family, and it wasn't mine. And it was this foreign energy that I think a part of me knew didn't belong to me, and yet my energetic body was trying to get rid of this thing that was identified as foreign.
Was
And
it, are you talking about emotion, like a depression or a particular anxiety, or?
I think it's more vague than that. It's more of an energy, like the details of what it is have been stripped away through
Mm.
generations,
Mm.
and what's left is really the essence of
Mm.
the feeling, which is it's something that's not in resonance with the rest of me as
Yeah,
a
yeah,
vibrational
yes,
organism.
yeah.
Um, and I've struggled with this autoimmunity, which is where your immune system attacks your own tissue. I mean, it's kind of very poetic, actually, when you think about what the immune system is. It's the body deciding what is the self and what is the other. And when we have these autoimmune conditions where we are attacking ourselves, I mean, think about what that really says about our relationship to ourselves.
So let's slow down with that. So let me see if I've got this. So what it might mean to me is that we otherize ourselves, and we're deficient in self-love, and maybe not even that we're deficient in self-love, but we might also be active in self-hate or in self-disregard, pushing ourselves away.
Absolutely. I mean, that's certainly my opinion.
Yeah, no, that's incredibly deep. And gosh, yeah, what a great topic. And how amazing. I think sort of there's all this talk about self-love. It's certainly current. I mean, at least probably more in your and I kind of circles. I did meet a woman the other day. I said, I'm writing a book, and I said it's a self-love romance, and she thought it was a book about masturbation. So I was like, oh, I guess that, I mean, not that I have any problem with a book about masturbation. That could be awesome, but it's not actually the topic. I'm talking more in these kind of energetic terms, and actually this sort of journey of understanding of kind of, it's like so much of my psychedelic path has actually been waking up to, these really kind of shadowy parts of self, and the parts of me that have been really like, gosh, I mean, with Iboga, I mean, I didn't mean to go there, but what it woke me up to is this part that did not want to be around. And I had always identified as a positive person, always put my best face on and move forwards. But I got to see how this way I'd been kind of like secretly at odds with myself, and there's part that just wanted to just not even be here. And then there's a part that does want to be here. And it's like, how do you get the parts of self on the same team? Or is it more about, it's probably a yes and, but I was going to say, is it more about just dissolving some negative shit that's been hanging around for a long time?
Right. I mean, it's even then, if you have this, negative shit, it's not cohesive with the rest of this integrated self that you have. And it's seen as this foreign other entity. And so, there's ways that we can accept and find ways of peacefully harmonizing all the parts of ourself by witnessing the things that need to be witnessed within us, or kind of expelling them. But the idea is to bring harmony and wholeness to all the facets of the self, in order to make our immune systems happy, right?
Do you think with autoimmune, because we're talking about the sort of the intergenerational aspect of it, so do you think that you kind of come into this life with it? Or do you think it kind of, it must be accelerated through trauma within this life, right?
Yeah. So definitely there's science to suggest this. And also from my personal experience in working with hundreds of people with autoimmune conditions, trauma seems to be a pretty foundational element of what sort of allows these conditions to propagate. And we do see that there is an association with adverse childhood experiences, which are basically a way of quantifying trauma. And there are increased risks of being hospitalized or developing autoimmune conditions and other diseases like cancer or diabetes or chronic illnesses in association with how many adverse childhood experiences you had. So there's definitely a relationship. And I mean, it's quite explainable in a scientific way. It seems like a large leap. Oh, that emotional stuff could affect your immune system, but it's very, very mechanistically understandable and from a scientific perspective also.
Yeah. No, I agree with that. Okay. So I'm going to circle back to your story. So you started working with the medicine, and you were noticing energetic changes sort of in your psyche and your perspective, and also changes in your body all at the same time.
Yes. So I did this first ceremony, and it completely rattled my world. And I bulldozed my cottage to build a castle that's something that tends to happen where Kambo can be completely disruptive. And
Oh,
it's generally,
interesting. So you see a lot of people change their lives pretty radically after Kambo.
yeah,
Yeah.
I call it like a crisis medicine or ordeal medicine, because it's people come to this medicine in times of transformation. So people are always in this period where things are changing, and this just accelerates it, puts some rocket fuel underneath them a bit. And it's generally wise to consider doing like a series to get the most sort of potency from what your intention is around doing in Kambo. So I did my 3 sessions over about a 3-month period, and in that 3 months, my entire life fell apart. But I started to regain health and clarity like I had never had before, and I accelerated my healing path on a physical and emotional level. So then I started self-administering.
Wow, you're
And
hardcore.
yeah, well, I just felt like, okay, I need more of this. So the friend that brought me to that ceremony, he had started sort of working on other people. We were both like getting really into this at the same time. And then he helped me learn how to self-administer. And then, people would ask me and they'd be like, well, can you do it for me? And I'm like, well, I guess I can do it for friends too. So then I started working on friends here and there. And then people just kept asking me. And then I started working on other people. And next thing I knew, I was a practitioner to some degree. And I was like, I feel like I need training, like I feel like I should probably do this right. So then I went and did my training and certification with the IAKP, which is the International Association of Kambo Practitioners. And once I came back from that training, I was way more competent and skilled as a practitioner. And as soon as I hit the ground running, I returned from that training and the Kambo exploded and it never slowed down. And so for 3.5 years, I was just serving a prolific amount of ceremonies, probably about 350 sessions per year.
Wow.
And then I, took a
Wow,
little
that's
break.
such a lot. Jesus.
Yeah, a
And you didn't
lot.
get burnt out?
No, I did. That's why I moved away.
Yeah. I was gonna
I
say
was
that's
so
ridiculous.
burnt
Yeah.
out. So then I went to, Bali, and I haven't really served much for the last year and a
Yeah.
half. Then I came back to the US just like a week ago, and had 2 days to relearn how to drive and get all my stuff out of storage. And the first thing I did was go to Phoenix and do a Kambo marathon. I did 10
So
ceremonies.
interesting. It's like, welcome back to America. We're all sick.
Yeah.
Let's go.
It was like a faucet. I just turned the faucet back on, and it was just water running, waiting to be.
There's no end of healing that needs to take place or that is desired for sure. But
Yeah.
what your story brings me back to kind of one of my kind of recurring questions about Kambo, and it's a bit like, surely what goes up must come down. So if Kambo gives you this kind of rocket fuel, which it does, I think, on a, certainly when I've taken it, I've had bursts of kind of totally different level energy afterwards. And obviously, you must have experienced that way more. And then you tell me, you did basically a ceremony a day of really hardcore healing for how many years was that?
Oh, 3.5.
Yeah. I mean, that's that's an insane stint. So, and then you did burn out. So how does this work? My concern about Kambo is that we're somehow sort of pressing this override button on, and then it's going to burn out the adrenals because we're not, even though it's wonderful to have that much energy, we're not supposed to have it in a sustained way.
Yeah, I completely agree. And especially these full purgative sessions, they do take a bit out of you. I'm not necessarily condoning that people are having these intense purgative sessions on a regular
Mm,
basis, especially if they're already healthy. If you have a chronic illness
mm,
and you basically need the Kambo as an antibiotic intervention, I think that's one of the best cases to argue for regular sustained use of it, and that certainly was necessary for me. But now that I'm very healthy and vibrant,
mm.
I don't use it a lot. And
So you
when
don't have pain anymore? I mean,
I'm human, I have
yeah, yeah,
pain,
yeah. Obviously,
you
like
know
headaches and toothaches, but you know what I mean? Like sort of daily, ongoing.
Yeah, I no longer identify
Mm,
as being chronically ill. I don't have chronic fatigue. I don't have depression. I don't really have joint pain. I'm able to eat foods that I used to not be able to eat. I don't have insomnia. Like, a lot of my symptoms have
mm,
resolved. I'm
mm.
not, completely finished with my healing process. I do sometimes relapse or take steps back or have new symptoms emerge. But for the most part, I'm highly functional now, whereas
Yeah.
before I couldn't even hold a part-time job. Now I
Mm,
can run multiple businesses and work 15-hour days if I need to. Um, so my level of resilience is unlike any time it's ever been, and I owe a lot of that to Kambo.
yeah.
And there's a certain point where I said, okay, I think that's enough. And I kind of don't use it a lot anymore.
Mm.
When I do use it, I've actually become a really big fan of microdosing it. And I
I
think,
was going to ask you about this. Yeah, tell me, tell me. I'm really curious.
yeah,
Yeah,
so, I really believe that less is more.
yeah.
And rather than having these extreme, purgative experiences on a regular basis, I kind of just like top off with a very small dose of Kambo. So the way that I work with microdosing Kambo, is it's done in a dry manner, which means that you don't reach a point where you are vomiting. So you're not drinking this 1.5 to 2 liters of water.
Yeah, because I'm just going to slow that down for a second for the people who have not tried Kambo, which is going to be most people. From my personal experience, one of the hardest bits is you have to drink so much water beforehand in a short period of time. And just drinking that much water just makes you feel so horrible. I mean, for me, that's just the worst, you know? And also I think that paired with the psychology of just sort of knowing you're about to go through this massive purging experience is kind of not a fun combo. Sorry, back to you. Okay, so no heavy drinking beforehand of water.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, it's ideal to still be fasted, but it's not as imperative. So
Mm,
if you've eaten within the last 6 hours, it's kind of not a big deal because you're not going to be throwing up.
yeah.
Um, and I find it to be great. Like, when I'm starting to slip back in my health a little bit, I'll put this just tiny little point on. Living in Bali, there's something called Bali belly that a lot of us get, and there's all sorts of different pathogens there, and it's pretty common to get weird food poisoning or whatever, even just from the tap water. And countless times I've just put a microdose on when I had Bali belly, and it's fully resolved in a day. I've put it
Wow.
on other people who also have had Bali belly for 2 months straight, and I put the point on, and they're fine the next day, and they're completely clear.
So what's the experience of having just that amount without doing it dry and like that? Do you have a experience? Do you feel nauseous? What happened?
So the goal is to kind of experience the sensations up until nausea. So it's just like that first sort of 30 seconds that you have in the Kambo
Mm,
experience, where the heart starts to beat a little harder. You get
mm,
the hot flushing sensation, maybe some tingling. You might even feel a little bit of like pressure in your head. But
mm,
the idea is to not hit the point where you start feeling nauseous.
mm.
And if you do hit that point, then I kind of like pull the Kambo off and let it stabilize a bit. And so it's really a fascinating experience because you do feel it. It's not like there's no perception of this thing in your system, but it's so gentle and so manageable that you can really kind of tap into the essence of the spirit of
Mm.
the Kambo and not be distracted by this massive physiological,
Right. By the drama of the whole
discomfort.
thing. Yeah, no,
Exactly.
I'd really like to try it that way. And what are you noticing in terms of results for, I mean, you told me about the barley belly, but for, do you feel like the results are less in the microdose?
I think it really depends on what the goal is. I think having a full purgative dose is good for some people at certain times of their life,
Yeah.
especially if you're going through these transitions and you do need to be rattled hard. I mean, they're disruptive, and that's sometimes what we need is to take us and shake us so we get unstuck from our patterning, right? But sometimes we don't need that. Sometimes things are going well. Sometimes we're really grounded. Sometimes we just want to actually use the peptides, and we don't need to have this huge spiritual opening. So that's what I like about the microdosing approach is it's more of a meditation activity and slash or a peptide therapy.
Mm.
So
Mm-hmm.
I've mostly used it as a peptide therapy when I feel like I'm having some sort of infection or that my adrenals and my stress response has kind of gotten off. I'll just use these microdoses as a bit of a reset, or to actually battle infectious organisms. I had corona and I self-administered Kambo, and
Ah.
it was amazingly terminating for the symptoms. Um, Not necessarily, full disclosure, I'm not recommending that necessarily to anybody. I'm not a doctor. Kambo is not an FDA approved medicine.
Yeah.
It seems to work really well for a lot of things, and also just staying connected to the spirit of Kambo. And as a practitioner, I want to stay connected to it, but I don't want to put myself through these like huge ordeal purgative ceremonies on a regular basis because I don't need to. I've been there and I've done that, and I've done my work with this medicine largely.
What is the spirit of Kambo? Can you speak to that?
Well, once you kind of get through the distractions of this intense physical experience, you're able to kind of touch a deeper metaphysical space that this spirit likes to occupy and interact with you in. And it's a bit hard to describe because it's unlike any other thing. It's not psychedelic, it's not meditation, it's its own mind expansive door. um, but what I can tell you is from working with this spirit, it is so incredibly kind. It is so pure of heart, and its intentions are so clean and clear. And it definitely has its own agenda, and it's doing something intentionally by interacting with all of us, by reaching out and calling all of us. But I'm okay with it because its intention really seems to be rooted in absolute love.
Yeah.
And
So what's that? It's interesting. You said an agenda. If we just follow that, because it's kind of fun.
yeah.
What is Kambo's agenda? Let's imagine ourselves, into the eyes of the frog, and what's the world that creature wants to see, that spirit wants to see.
Yeah, I believe that the frog is somewhat of an ambassador of the forest, of the earth, really, and the natural realm. And I think it's trying to help humans, to help everybody else, to help the whole planet. And I think it sees that the fundamental sort of sickness and pain that we hold as individuals is collectively what's driving so much destruction in this world. And the frog is symbolically in a number of traditions, and certainly in Native American tradition, is that it occupies these two different worlds, the water and the land, but really the earth and the spiritual realm. And I think it's here to bridge the gap and to help accelerate the human species healing process in order to salvage the rest of what this earth would like to preserve moving forward. So I think that's a bit of its agenda. I could be wrong. But it feels like it's doing it in a very kind and authentic way through helping us reconnect to ourselves and ultimately to our planet.
Beautiful. Thank you. While we're on conservation and ecology, um, let's speak about this medicine and how it's preserved, and are we in danger of exploiting the frog population, or what's going on in that department?
Yeah. Currently, the frogs are in really good standing. There's plenty of them. The process of extracting the secretion, in theory, doesn't harm them. Of course, that depends on the individual person that's harvesting and how kind they are, but it doesn't have to be harmful or exploitative in any way. It can be done in a sustainable way. Habitat loss is the biggest threat to these frogs at this point, and most of the medicine is harvested by the natives who really know that jungle and have a connection to that land, and they don't want to exploit the frogs because they know they're an important part of the ecosystem.
Yeah.
Now, that being said, there's a potential for a similar issue that we see with like ayahuasca and iboga, where more people are interested in these things than there really is supply in these natural jungle habitats. So I suspect that eventually we could get to the point where if Kambo keeps becoming very popular in the West, we might run into sustainability issues. So, that's part of my drive as a scientist, is to explore the possibility and the idea of even creating a synthetic form of Kambo that takes in multiple peptides rather than these isolated peptides, and potentially creating an alternative option for people that maybe just want like the medical benefits of the peptides and aren't so concerned with the spirit or the essence of the frog. And it's not wrong to just want the medicinal effects of peptides. It's just like with psilocybin therapy that's being pushed through the FDA right now. That psilocybin doesn't come from a mushroom. It's not from a spirit of an organism. It's synthesized in a lab. And you know what? It still helps people, and that's okay. And that might actually be the most sustainable way to deal with some of these medicines. I mean, mushrooms are easy to grow, so that's really not an issue of sustainability because they can be cultivated. But frogs are different. They're more complex organisms, and they require very specific environments. They don't appear to do well in captivity or create the same cocktail of peptides in captivity. And they really do rely on being a connected part of their habitat in order to produce this medicine. So in a way, the Kambo is a collective combined effort of the entire interactions that you see in the jungle, from the soil interacting with the plants that produce alkaloids that the bugs eat and that then these frogs eat. And because of the alkaloids in the bugs from them eating the plants, these frogs contain all these amazing ingredients that are derived from this interconnection from the jungle.
Oh, that's such a great description. Thank you so much. I just had such a wonderful image as you were talking of this like incredibly potent kind of like green, like a collective green medicine, that could just kind of get piped into our systems. I feel like that's so what we need to connect to, because it is connection. And that's what you're describing, right? It's like the medicine of connection. And it's interesting. I keep going back to that. I've done so many different kind of healing explorations at this point, and worked for quite a while as a therapist. And it always comes back to that. It always comes back to that. We need to connect with ourselves, connect with each other, connect with our environment, connect with the disenfranchised parts. It's the lack of connection that is like fucking us up every time.
Yeah, it really is the antidote to so much of our pain, I believe.
Yeah. Gosh. Okay. So this is going to seem like a ridiculous question, because in a way, everything about Kambo is so surprising. But have there been any sort of findings along the way that have been surprising? Like any bizarre healing stories or anything come to mind on that front?
Oh gosh, hundreds. Yeah. My
How long have you
problem
got?
is
Yeah.
remembering them all.
Yeah. Sure.
But I have a couple of my favorites that I like to share, and I do wish that I had more long-term follow-up with people to really,
Yeah.
get the full picture.
It could be good to have a way to document it. Some kind of
Yeah.
site where people can kind of, message board of some kind could be good. Yeah.
That's definitely on the agenda,
Yeah.
as we develop like more sophisticated clinical research and stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, just a few examples. I had a woman who had Epstein-Barr virus, who was pretty much like incapacitated to some extent, was really struggling to function, and was missing a lot of days at work. And she actually flew from out of state to sit with me. And she did 2 sessions, back to back sessions, very small doses, like 1, maybe 2 points. And when she flew home, and she's been in full remission since that Kambo series. It's been over 3.5 years, and she's still vibrant and healthy and completely back to her old self.
Beautiful.
Yeah, amazing. I've worked on people that haven't been able to have a natural bowel movement for years of their life, and pretty much only use like enemas in order to clear their bowels. And they do 1 session and they start pooping on their own.
Yay.
Yeah.
It's such a fundamental thing, isn't it? To be able to do your own poo. I mean, it's just like so basic.
Getting the waste out,
But actually another basic thing I actually struggle with, and I wonder if Kambo could help me with this, is sleep.
Yeah.
Any findings on Kambo sleep combo?
Yeah, I mean, sleep is a bit complex because I feel like it's sort of downstream of a lot of other things that are out of whack. But I mean, Kambo does really work on vagal nerve tone and rebalancing that pituitary adrenal axis with the hypothalamus, and just kind of resetting our autonomic nervous system, which a lot of insomnia, I think, is related to stress and cortisol imbalances and adrenal imbalances, and also inflammation.
Yeah.
So Kambo is definitely good at addressing all of those things sort of tangentially. And people sometimes sleep really well after Kambo. I actually am sometimes a bit like jittery after Kambo. So it really depends on the person and kind of what's shifting on a chemical and energetic level.
Yeah. Back to everything being so interconnected. It's quite hard to isolate, isn't it?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we'll do is I'd like to close with 2 more questions. One is the greatest challenge for you working with Kambo.
My greatest challenge. One of the beautiful things about Kambo is it's actually been pretty organic and flowy. Honestly, the biggest challenge has been the frog as my boss. It kicks my ass. Like, I feel like I made a deal with the devil or something. Like, I feel like I made this arrangement with this spirit that, it promised to be my ally and to give me my health and to give me such an amazing life in exchange for being its little puppet. I've been working for it. And I tell you what, the frog rides me hard. Like, it pushes me as hard as it can, and it makes me do as much work for it as I could possibly tolerate. But every time I kind of consciously say to it, I need you to back off a bit. I'm exhausted. It does. So,
so it's actually teaching you to be your own advocate and to communicate clearly as well.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
Like any rough boss, right? You can either go into victimization about it, like, oh, it's so hard, or you can be like, fuck, man, I've got to stand up for myself one way or another. And sometimes that means leaving, but it doesn't sound like you're there yet. Or maybe never. Maybe you won't be allowed.
I just needed a break.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's remarkable. It's like when I actually consciously communicate, hey, I need you to like chill out a bit. It really does. It's really interesting. And I'm so blessed and grateful that it fills my life with opportunity and with work and chances to help people and to move Kambo forward as something that can be more accessible. But yeah, it works me hard.
Yeah.
But it's all beautiful, and I would
Yeah.
say that's just the biggest challenge is holding space for others in a very intense manner takes a lot of energy, but it's taught me so much.
Yeah. I respect the real work of holding space for people, especially when you're dealing with their very, sort of profound core vulnerable issues. That's serious work. It's really serious.
Yeah.
And wonderful, really valuable work. So I actually just want to take this moment to say bravo and well done for all of your hard work. I know you've helped a lot of people. And then we will close with your, I guess, let's do like a dream for you and a dream for, the sort of the broader application of this medicine. And if it's one and the same, that's fine.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a bit unattached to how things want to unfold, but I think the reality is that this is growing in popularity. It's super useful for conditions that people aren't getting the help that they need. And I think that the natural sort of progression is that, like psychedelics, it's inevitable that Kambo is going to enter into mainstream culture to some degree. And my intention is to help sort of curate what way that is done, because if it enters into mainstream in a reckless way or a way that's not presenting the story of what Kambo is and could be in an appropriate, grounded way, it could actually result in a lot of backlash. It could potentially result in the substance becoming criminalized and scheduled, which would be terrible. So I think the vision that I would like to see for Kambo is to have it be integrated, if it must be, into the world in a way that is going to be sustainable, that's going to be full of integrity, that's going to be safe and not radicalized. And like I mentioned earlier, perhaps that means that there is a future where there is some sort of synthetic version of Kambo created so that people can have the benefits of this experience without us putting pressure on this precious frog population. So that's kind of the vision that I have is by pioneering the scientific research around Kambo and bringing a grounded, balanced voice to what this substance really is and could be, I think will help preserve it in the long run.
Well, lucky frog to have you as an advocate and a teacher and a leader in this medicine. Thank you so much for your time. I always learn so much from you. And let me know if you're ever in LA. I'm bad about driving, so I don't come to San Diego. But I'll probably sooner be in Bali. That's a nice thought. So I'll look you up in Bali. Yeah. Thank you, my dear.
Wonderful.
Really
Thank you,
appreciate it.
Jane. It was such a pleasure to reconnect with you. And
Beautiful.
if anyone wants to connect with me and ask any questions or just get in touch, you can go to my website. It's medicinefrogkambo.com. That's Kambo, Medicine Frog Kambo. You can reach out to me if you have a question. If you want to connect, then feel free. I'd be happy to chat with you all.
Thank you for making yourself available. I didn't want to put you on the spot, but that's awesome. Okay. All right. Bye, dear. Thank you.
Okay. Take care.
Have a great day. It really made me laugh, the idea that Caitlin had a frog for a boss. Oh, good stuff. So, it just reminded me that as we learn to receive, we also learn to give. Caitlin's journey was of receiving healing from the frog, and now she must give back to the frog. All healing is relational. We cannot become more whole alone. Simple idea, but surprisingly hard to grasp sometimes, sending out waves of connection and inviting you to come back for more. Thank you for listening.